guys.
Let's get some energy.
Yeah,
That
we
was
need some
kind of sad.
energy.
Woo! I know this is like the slump of the day. It's 3 p.m. It's nap time. I know, but wake up, okay? Wake up with us.
We are so excited because we don't talk a lot on our podcast about the behind the scenes of the podcast. And so I'm super excited because I feel like there's so many things we've learned. We've been doing this for almost 4 years, almost having our 4-year podcast anniversary. And we've learned so much, and I'm just so excited to share everything with you guys. We were getting flashbacks to high school, and we were waiting in the wings because we used to do dance recitals together, like in high school, and we'd like hold hands before we went out. And now we're here, so it's super exciting.
This is way less scary than a dance recital. Can I just say
Yes.
that? Those dancers out there, you can relate.
We wanted to kind of give like a background of our podcast a little bit. So we started it around, like I said, 4 years ago, and Chelsea and I have been best friends since high school, and we just like can't shut up. So as you guys know, if you listen to the podcast, like we always say, we would love to be mysterious, but like we can't stop talking. So that's why we thought podcast would be a great option for us. So we started it, and we had no idea what was going to become of it. We didn't know anyone who really had a podcast that we knew personally. And the only other podcasts that we were familiar with that were two girls, I think was like My Favorite Murder, which is a whole different vibe, obviously. It's true crime. So I feel like we forged our own path in a lot of ways because we didn't have like much inspiration in the actual space. Sorry, I just looked at the screen and it threw me off. But where was I going with this? Oh, well, one thing I wanted to mention is that, so we work with Dear Media, and they're our podcast network. They're awesome. And we actually approached them, so they didn't really know us or anything, and we just reached out to them through like another connection I had. And I remembered this girl, I had been talking to this girl on the phone about something else in the influencer space, and she was like, oh yeah, and we're starting a podcast network called Dear Media, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I wasn't starting a podcast or anything at the time, so I didn't care. And then months later, we started ours, and we're like, what are we doing? Like, we don't know how to see analytics. Like, we had no idea how many people were listening. We're like, oh, probably like a few hundred. And then like we got our analytics once we started working with Dear Media, and we're like, oh, people actually listen to this podcast. Like, we were shocked. But my point is that we didn't really wait for an opportunity to come to us. Like, we created an opportunity. We reached out to them, and we set up a meeting, and they ended up signing us. And I know not everything is always just going to be like an instant thing like that, but that's some advice that I would like just give in general. If you're trying to be an influencer, a creator, a podcaster of any kind, like create your own opportunities, because they're not always gonna fall into your lap. And I feel like a lot of my, like the most successful things I've done, I've like fully just put myself out there and tried to create it myself.
Just for fun, raise your hand if you have a podcast, if you want to start a podcast, or you thought about starting a podcast. Oh, look
love
at
this.
The thing is podcasting is like music, where there's not just one music artist. It's not just like, oh, there's already so many podcasts out there. They're already doing what I want to be doing. People listen to multiple podcasts. They want to listen to, it's only growing. So there's room for everybody to hop on the podcast train, and it benefits everybody. Like, the more podcast listeners, the more podcasts, the more the whole community grows. So
yes.
Do it.
I feel like it's easy to compare yourself or get jealous or feel like, I don't know, if you see someone else growing way faster than you or something like that. But I think it's such a good point to realize that a win for another podcast or for another creator is truly a win for you, because it boosts the entire space. And I've used this example before, but like I always think about when I was doing Instagram more, like I would link the Skims I was wearing. And I was thinking, wow, if Kim Kardashian didn't create Skims, I wouldn't be making money off of this affiliate link. Like, we all build each other up. That's just a random example, but it's, yeah, a win for one person in the space is a win for everyone. And if you can see it like that, I think it creates a more abundance type of mindset, which is just more helpful anyway.
Yeah, and podcasting is literally like nothing else, especially like with social media, because obviously you can bring it to YouTube as well, which is great. And we've been going back and forth, but a little bit kind of loses the magic of podcasting because you forget that you're talking to people. It's just, you and your best friend or whoever you're doing the podcast with, maybe yourself, just talking to each other, having a real meaningful conversation and letting everything go. You don't get instant feedback like you do on TikTok. You don't get instant feedback like you do on Instagram or even YouTube sometimes. So podcasting is, I'm an advocate for podcasting, obviously.
Definitely.
You guys need to do it ASAP. But I think, what was I just going to say about the podcasting, YouTubing? Oh, and like just kind of having an abundance mindset about getting in the space and knowing that whatever you deserve to have a successful podcast, no matter what you're talking about, no matter who you are, no matter if you have 0 followers or 3 million followers, it's no different. Like, obviously, you're gonna have to work a little bit harder to get an audience, but you deserve to have a successful podcast. And it doesn't matter. I think the most important part of a podcast, and something that has helped us keep ours going and strong, is our dynamic. Whatever you do for your podcast, if it's just by yourself, find somebody who you have a good, healthy dynamic with, because while, we all know frenemies, it's like, while that is like a, capturing dynamic, it obviously doesn't last very long. So find somebody who you feel comfortable with. It doesn't have to be like, I'm so glad JC chose me to do the podcast with. I didn't have any followers. Like, she obviously could have chosen someone with a ton more followers, but I'm like, but you can't beat me, But you can't beat our dynamic because we've known each other for so long. A lot of the podcasts I listen to, it's not like, oh, they're just so famous and now I want to listen to them speak. I want to listen to real people talk about real things. And everyone here, I think, is a real human. So you can have a podcast that has listeners, that has a community, and you can build on that. So people will know. People can see through anything. Trust me. They can. If you're faking it, if you're trying to fake something, your listeners will catch on very fast.
Definitely. I think my number one, I have written down just some, what's the word, tangible? I kept saying tactical and I knew it wasn't right. Tangible tips for if you want to start a podcast. The first tip is start. It's actually not a joke. You need to just start and go for it. You can adjust later. I think quality is super important, don't get me wrong, but starting and being consistent with something, that is where you're going to find success. And I'm gonna call some of my friends out right now because a lot of my friends wanna start TikTok and they'll come to me and be like, I wanna post more on TikTok, or but my videos just haven't been doing well. And I'll go to their account and I'll call them out and I'm like, you've posted once in the past 3 weeks. What do you expect? You gotta keep going. You gotta post more. If you are more consistent, you're bound to see results. I was just talking to my friend the other day and I was like, okay, picture if you post 3 TikToks a day for 3 months, that's 90 TikToks. You're telling me one of them isn't gonna do kind of well and you're gonna get some followers and then you can build from there. And not that followers are everything, but something else that I wanted to touch on is just that our personal brands help our podcast tremendously. My TikTok or YouTube, mentioning it, Chelsea mentioning it on her Instagram stories and linking it, those are all the reasons. It's a huge reason why our podcast has grown, and also from other people, just word of mouth and spreading it on their stories and stuff like that. But having a personal brand is just so helpful if you're trying to have longevity and you're trying to grow any sort of project.
And sorry, really quick, off of that, the podcasting community is so collaborative. Pod swaps are amazing. Honestly, just reach out. If you're starting a podcast and you're like, I want this guest on, I don't know if they'll do it, just reach out because they might just be like, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. And then that person will post about it on their story and then you can get more listeners that way. And people love pod swapping because again, it's just having conversations with people. It's not that much stress or pressure. So just kind of like JC was saying earlier, you got to go after the opportunities. Just reach out to people that you want to interview, that you want to talk to. The worst case is that they'll say no, and then you'll be in the same place you were before, but at least you'll have tried.
I remember when we reached out to Caitlin Bristow, because we were going to Nashville, and we're like, let's just reach out. Her podcast is way bigger than ours. She's a star, a Bachelor star.
And we had reached out to a couple people in Nashville, too, with, less followers as well.
A lot less followers. And we were like, well, she's, obviously not going to respond, but, might as well. And she literally her team responded the same day. They're like, yep, let's do a pod swap. What day? And we were like, okay, cool. So then when we got to
Just
Nashville,
faked it. We're like, yeah, we're totally supposed to be here.
yeah, so then we were on her podcast and she was on ours, and it was like helpful for us. And if we never would have reached out, that obviously never would have happened. I also wanted to say, like, don't be scared to reinvent the wheel or do your own thing. In fact, I think it's really important because while I don't really like the argument that things are oversaturated, I just feel like it's not true. Like, even though, yes, it's more oversaturated, or the social media world and influencers and all of that, it's more saturated than it used to be. I think you guys have probably learned during this conference, like I've heard in a few of the speeches, that like there is unlimited opportunities for everyone, and I feel like especially with TikTok, that's where I personally think it has the greatest algorithm at this exact moment for growth. But there's just so much opportunity, and something that we did in the beginning was like, truly feel like we were trying to create a podcast that didn't exist at the time. And it's not that you have to be like, I don't know, doing something so insane, but we were kind of playing off of My Favorite Murder because that's the only podcast we'd ever seen of like two girls. I'm not kidding, because we just didn't listen to podcasts, and it was 4 years ago. And we were like, we should do, like they do this thing where people write in their like hometown murders and then they react to them. And we were saying we should do that concept, but with like embarrassing stories. Like have people just email us the worst thing that's ever happened to them on a date, and like we should just react to it. That'd be so fun. We hadn't seen that anywhere, right? I'm like, am I ripping someone off? I don't think we had seen that. And so we did that, and it like was such a success. And I think it's because it was something that wasn't around at the time. Like it was truly something different. And I feel like there's always going to be something like that you can include into your podcast, whether it's a segment, whatever it is, like, and hone into what you're good at and what you find enjoyable. And it can be literally anything. Like Chelsea loves anime. That's not something that like I'm into, or some, I don't watch anime, but I'm thinking, even if you had a podcast on your own, you could be like, okay, welcome to Anime Corner, where we talk about this, because there are other people.
Nobody steal that. I'm using that.
Because other people are into that too. So it's like, be your own person and find your individuality and be like, I'm going to talk about something that I'm into. You will find that more people than you think are into it too.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, you can't fake it. If you are genuinely not interested in an interview, in a topic, people will tell. If you're bored, your listeners will be bored. So you have to have fun with it. Like that is the key, I feel like, to success in life, is just having fun. We always try to aim to have fun. We always know, like, to be honest, sometimes we'll come back from an episode that we just recorded when we're trying to be too in our head. We're trying to cater more of like, well, what do people want to hear from us, instead of, really doing what we want to talk about. And we'll walk away from the episode and be like, maybe that wasn't the best. The episodes we walk away from, we're like, this is the best job in the world, is ones where we just genuinely have fun. We're joking about like being a horse girl and just pumpkin spice lattes and stuff. It's like, it could be so pointless, but I feel like if you guys listen to the podcast, I mentioned this yesterday, on one of the recent episodes, how having fun is the most inspirational thing that you can do, and making other people feel good is the best gift that you can give them, because people don't always love to be told what to do. People don't always love advice. Obviously, if they know.
Just released an advice episode today. Go listen.
Yeah, swipe up. No, but they don't, unless they know that's what they're coming for.
Yes.
But more so than anything else, I guess for me, when the times that I get the best ideas, when I'm feeling the most confident, is when I'm just having fun, because I'm present, I'm in the moment. And I feel like if you can make people feel good, whether that is just telling funny stories or talking about your own life, whatever you do to make people feel good, that's gonna inspire people, and people will, there's that quote, it's like, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember the way that you made them feel. And that's the point of podcasting. It's you always want people to walk away from your episode feeling better than they started. And if you do that, they're gonna wanna come back. They're gonna wanna be like, oh, that really made me feel good. Again, it could be talking about dinosaurs or something. I don't know. They could be talking about anything. But if it makes you feel good, then you're gonna wanna listen again.
Not the dinos. No, I agree. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, that's perfect.
I also think, like, going off of that, kind of thinking about the vibe that you want your podcast to have and the feelings that you want your listeners to walk away with. And I think for us, like we said from day one, our little motto or whatever was, what was it? Something, here to inspire and entertain.
Make lots of money.
Yeah. Here to inspire and entertain. And that's I feel like we've stuck really true to that. It's like that's how we want our listeners to feel. Like we want them to get a boost of inspiration and feel good, not necessarily because we're like, oh, we have the best advice for you, but just hopefully because we're having fun with our life and we feel like we're living our best lives, that can be contagious to other people. And then just entertaining for fun. Like, I mean, again, we just like don't know how to be quiet and like stop joking around. So I feel like we were born for this, you know? This is what we're meant to do. So it's fun. And that's something that I did for my YouTube channel too, is like, what's the vibe of this? I want to create my own world. Like on the internet, I want this to be like my own vibe and my own world where people come and they have this like specific feeling when they leave. And for us, I guess this kind of goes into creating a visual brand as well, which we definitely wanted to touch on, is like, we want our listeners to feel like they're at a girls' night. Like we want it to be like you're all our best friends, and we feel that way even when we meet you in person. Like
You know way too much.
You know way too much. Like we have been too open at times, but it's good. It's like we all are friends, and it's so fun, and we want you to feel like we're at a sleepover together. And then based off of that, something else that I do feel like we created from kind of like nothing, just from our minds, was we wanted to create something because a podcast was primarily, especially back when we started, just like an audio experience. We wanted to create a visual element, and we were like, okay, let's make a separate Instagram called What We Said Podcast, and at the beginning, don't go back, okay? It's ugly. At the beginning,
I think they're archived.
There was no vibe. But we tried to have a vibe. Yeah. From the beginning, we were doing the pink and blue, okay? But we just didn't know how to execute yet. And then
not the detectives. Not the detectives.
Yeah, we were giving FBI in our first cover photo. And we had like a little meeting because we were posting on our Instagram for a while. We were trying to make it cute, but there was no very specific like aesthetic to it. And I don't know when it was like a few years ago. I remember we had a meeting and I was like, Chelsea, our Instagram feed is ugly. Like, we need help. Like, we need to redo this. Like, I am so into photos and aesthetic and photography. I'm like, this is not sitting right with me. So we were like, okay, let's really hone in on the pink and blue thing. Like, that's our thing. It's cute. It's fun. We started shooting more film around that time. We're like, let's just make it, like, again, our own world. Like, this pink and blue, girly, fun, sleepover vibe where it's like, it matches the podcast. You listen to the podcast, and then you go to our Instagram, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is all flowing. And so we started doing that. And we can get more into, like, I mean, I guess that's what they paid for. I'm like, let's get more into the nitty-gritty of that. Of just, like, creating the outfits. Like, Chelsea creates the outfits.
I was going to say, we could break down what we do for merch photo shoots. Or not merch photo shoots. Well, also that. But, like, our photo shoots for our Instagram is... JC plans out the location, she gets the photo inspiration, I'll pick out some outfits, and we'll try and do like 3 or 4 outfits, and we literally will spend an entire day just shooting content so that we have like cute content to post for a month or 2. Yeah. That we can post along with our episodes. Again, just another avenue to get people to listen, to like remind them, hey, it's Tuesday, time to listen to a new episode. So we'll plan the outfits out, we'll order them, whatever, get it all figured out. We'll even do, what are they called, filler photos. Like we'll be, okay, let's get some cute pink and blue skincare or accessories or something like that. And then we'll go to a couple different locations. We set out a whole day. It's actually so fun. It's like literally one of my favorite days that we like have and spend together. And then we'll shoot all the photos, and then we have all this content for so long. But it takes
time and effort. I think we've been trying to do it seasonally, basically. So like 4 times a year, we do these big, like very extra photo shoots, and then we pretty much have content in those 4 photo shoots for the entire year because we do graphics as well. We have like a graphic designer who creates graphics for every other photo. So I feel like that's an example of also like working smarter, not harder. Like you can have, if you just plan things out, you can get a ton of content in one day. And yeah, that's been really, number one, fun for us, which is always, again, the basis of everything. Yeah. It's fun, we enjoy it. It's putting both of our strengths, at play, because Chelsea's super good with fashion and like putting together outfits. And then I'm more on the photo side, and so we like collaborate in that way. And I feel like it's a cool way to like be creative together too. And so, yeah, we've been doing that for a few years now, and that has also elevated our brand completely. And like, I remember years ago, I was like, my goal is for us to be able to get brand deals on our What We Said podcast Instagram. Like, not our personals, but like our podcast Instagram. And we've done a few like story stuff and whatever that added on to our podcast ads that we do, which is cool to just like see that come to fruition where we really have created this like visual as well as audio experience for people. Do you have, I'm like,
Well,
I
I was
going to
say another big tip that we kind of touched on, but I feel like we need to emphasize is consistency, because I've seen so many podcasts that start, I love them, and then they don't post for like 3 months, and I'm like, oh, I want to listen, like post another episode. And I feel like then by that time, sometimes people forget, unfortunately. So something that we did from the very beginning, we lived in 2 different states as well. So I would literally be like, okay, I'm gonna fly out for a week or something, and we're gonna record 4 or 5 episodes so that we can batch them out, and then we'll have, you know, episodes for a whole month. And we did that. We would see each other, like either JC would come to me or I would go to her. For probably how long, like 2 years before I actually ended up moving close, and now we live right next to each other, which is amazing.
And we have never missed a week. I mean,
Yeah.
there was maybe like one time where we missed
like
2
an
weeks.
intentional Christmas break or something.
Yeah, something like that. But like, that's also an example of like just, yeah, consistency where it's like we didn't make excuses even though we were in 2 different states. And we totally, like now looking back, I'm like, okay, girls, we could have done remote. We could have done remote. We were like, no, we have to
didn't
be
know
in
what Zoom
person.
was at the time.
We didn't know what Zoom was before the pandemic. So we would like make an effort. But I mean, I'm so glad we did,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's like brought us to this point. But yeah, we've been extremely consistent. And that's what I was saying even with the TikTok thing. I'm like, one of my biggest passions in life is TikTok, if you guys can't tell. Like, I can't stop talking about it because I just feel like there's so much opportunity on there. And like I'm saying, like I'll have people be like, well, I wish that my videos did well. And I'm like, well, you post 1 time a week, like post multiple times a day. And if you're genuinely trying to be a full-time content creator, like just crank those videos out. And not that it's not hard, but like I don't want to say it's easy to do that, but it's like there's so many little trends and like different TikToks you can do. And something else I wanted to mention is like writing down ideas in your notes on your phone. So whenever you have like a spark of inspiration, this is what I do for TikTok and for the podcast. And actually one time Leif, like recently, he was like, look, I wrote down some TikTok ideas, and there were 3 written down. I was like, oh, do you want to see my list? And I turned it around and I scrolled. I think I scrolled like 8 times. Like there was like hundreds of things because that's just how my brain works. But it's been super nice to reference back to, like for the podcast, I'll just write down if I ever have something that I think in my head, or if you have something, I'll write it down in a note app, in the notes app. And then if we're like, what should we talk about this week? I'll reference it. And I feel like there's like 9 times out of 10, we're like, oh, there's a really good option in there. So I think that's also like something that's important to do, is just keep a list of your ideas. That's also great for when you're not feeling inspired. If you're just like, oh dang, I don't really know what to talk about, you can look back and be like, oh yeah, that was a good idea, or a TikTok idea that you had, or whatever.
And I think another thing that kind of goes along with at least what we have found works for us, and I think just in general, people like listening to stories. So whether that's, obviously we have listeners write in their stories, which is easy for us, obviously, but also fun because we get to listen to other people. It feels like you guys are part of the podcast as well because we can kind of react to it. But even if you have stories about yourself, what you did, people like to hear stories. Like I could listen to people tell stories all the time. So if you can kind of hone in on your storytelling skills, if you can, find stories to even teach lessons, if you have something that you want to, give advice for, stories, that's why Jesus talked in fables or whatever it is. Wait, what is it?
Parables.
Fables. Parables.
Not fables.
Elementary, yeah.
Not fables.
Not fables, sorry, Jesus. Parables. But people react better to stories because it's not you directly being like, you should do this. It's like, oh, I have this, I'm inspired on my own to like follow after this. You know what I mean? I think stories are a great place to start. Like I said, you can even have people write in stories about random things, and people love that. So
I agree.
It's a fun little tip.
I think, yeah, when people are saying, even when you've been sharing about your postpartum journey, you're saying like, oh, I tried Pilates and I'm doing this. It's like, you're not telling other moms, you guys should go to Pilates. But it's like, maybe by hearing that, they were like, oh, I'm inspired to, do that too, or whatever. Gives people a little spark of inspo. I mean, this is not rocket science, but if you're wanting to start a podcast, your number 1 priority should be audio quality. Like, hands down, it's a podcast, they can only hear it, you need to have good audio. When I listen to a podcast that's like, I feel like there's so much good podcast equipment that's like actually not that expensive. I have someone in my family that actually just started a podcast, and he said that he got like a $40 mic, I think, from Target. Ours are a little bit more heavy duty because we've been doing it for a long time. But you need to have good audio, because when I listen to a podcast and it's like even like a Zoom interview, but they didn't get their audio, so it's just like super crackly, and I'm just like, I don't know. There's better stuff out there. I'm not gonna.
And it's not like a huge step either, is the thing. It's not super hard to get, obviously if you want, top level audio, but even just middle of the ground where people aren't noticing this is bad, audio, it's not that crazy of a step. And if you're really committed to having the podcast grow and that's gonna be your thing, then it's worth a little bit of investment or the little bit of research that you might have to do to kind of look in to see what could elevate the audio experience.
100%. And another like tangible tip that I had was just your cover photo. It should, be like obvious what your podcast is about and stuff. I feel like when you look at our cover photo, again, not the previous one. We're not looking at the
FBI. That was true crime.
It was giving true crime at some point, even though it was very cute. But now I think our cover photo very much emulates the current vibe of our podcast. Which again, when we even started our podcast, that's the other thing. You're going to evolve and grow. When we first started our podcast, we were having guests on primarily, and we were doing interviews, and we were talking more about like business and health and stuff, and that's amazing and great. And I think we're both still very passionate about those things, and we sprinkle those things in. But over quarantine actually is where we found our groove, because we couldn't have guests, because we couldn't see anyone, so we were like quarantining together, podcasting, and that's when our podcast started to grow the most, and we were like, oh, I guess people like when it's just us, again, having fun, like telling stories about our lives and also reading their stories and giving them advice and whatever else. And so we're like, this is what's working, like, and we love it. We have so much fun. We'd rather do what we're doing now. And then we created the cover photo to match that vibe. So now I think when you go to our podcast, I think it's obvious that it is kind of a girly, fun, sleepover type of vibe, which is exactly what we're going for. So it's really important for all of those things to match.
And I think something important as well is to remember, again, kind of circling back to like you have something special and you deserve to have a successful podcast, is you might be, there might be a bunch of different podcasts, that say talk about health, that might talk about, just health, any kind of niche that goes with health and wellness. And you may be saying like, well, I don't have like that much like new information to give. There's so much information. You might be the one voice that people need to hear it from. Like you might say something that has been said a bazillion times. Like for example, I think everyone thought that I invented like, if men have one thing, it's audacity. And they're like, yes, Chelsea, that's so funny. I'm like, I literally stole it off Twitter, but I'm like, they needed to hear it from my voice. No, not really like that. But even when you're giving advice, and if you say, talking about accepting yourself, you might really touch somebody with how you say it. You might be that one voice that person needed to hear. So never think that you are like, well, I'm just repeating something, or we kind of get like that sometimes. We're like, we've already said that a bunch of times. But it's good to be reminded constantly of, these things, even with health and wellness or business, or, if you want to start a podcast about something like that, that's maybe a little bit more informational or self-help vibes, I guess.
Definitely. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes and they're very small because I don't want to miss anything.
Can you guys see me putting in my passcode on this?
No.
It's just 1111.
Oh, I wanted to talk really quick about like niches, because I've always been of the belief that, I've always said like you don't need a niche. I feel like I have an unpopular opinion in that way. Like because I feel like it messes people up. They want to, or it gets overwhelming. It's like, find your niche, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what that is. Like, I like so many things. That's how I feel. I'm like, I am confused in my own mind because I'm like over here making TikTok dances, but then I'm like teaching a business course. Like, this is not fitting. But then I realized like it does fit.
Preaching in the morning, twerking in the afternoon.
1,000%. But it's like it does fit because that's just me. And I think that's how we all are. Your niche is your personality. Exactly what you just said. Someone might just need to hear something from you specifically. All of us have our own perspectives and our own special, vibe about us, and that's what makes you you. So just like kind of lean into your personality and the way you speak about things. That is your niche. What I will say, so now I'm backtracking because I've always said like you don't need a niche. Like your niche is you. However, I do think that when you're starting out on social media from scratch, like it is helpful to kind of hone into something specific. And I feel like an example of that, of our niche even, would be the stories, like us doing listener write-ins and doing stuff like that. Like I felt like that was like kind of our thing that made us special. And other podcasts can do that too, it doesn't matter, but it's like, that is what people, I think, primarily know us for. Obviously, our personalities at this point too, but like that concept is kind of...
And it can be a starting point too. It's like you're not married to that. You can still like navigate. If something's working really well, and that's what you started with, amazing. But if you're going and it's like, maybe this isn't working, but people really like when I have the, pop culture recap segment. So maybe I'll just like do way more pop culture segment. I love talking about it, so let's do it and see how it goes. You can kind of experiment and just see what vibes with you, what works with you, what people are really liking. And obviously you don't want to listen to every single person's feedback, because we always get like contradicting feedback. We're like, what do you guys want? And people are like, no more stories. And then they'll be like, please, more stories. And so we're like, okay, well, that wasn't actually that helpful, because now we're more conflicted than ever. But you can also, if there's a majority, it's kind of nice to listen and be like, okay, people really liked this. Let's keep going with it. Obviously, don't like internalize it, because that is setting yourself up for failure if you get, you internalize your feedback a little too much.
Yeah.
But I think also, even with feedback and, as your podcast grows or as your listeners grow, you will never be able to stop everybody from judging you. That's just the fact of life. But you can stop yourself from judging you. So if you could just work on not judging yourself, you will start to feel more successful. Even from the outside, maybe people are like, what is she doing? You will start to live a happier life. And that actually, you can't count on success in that way, because you don't have expectations, but usually it does help. If you are not judging yourself, you're having fun, and you're just feeling yourself, that is contagious. Like, people can feel that. People are gonna be gravitated towards you. Like I said, making people feel good is the best gift that you can give somebody, and they're going to, like, we all know those people. If it's like, okay, I just feel so good around you, I don't even know why, but be that for somebody, be that for your listeners. Whether you're talking about anime, dinosaurs, doesn't matter. Like, you can still make people feel good.
Exactly. I just lost my train of thought completely.
Sorry.
What were you talking about before the dinosaurs?
Yeah.
I genuinely...
Also, us archaeologists, all of a sudden.
Wow.
Niches?
Niches. Like haters and stuff. I mean, so...
Haters and stuff.
I was getting my makeup done today, and the girl that was doing my makeup was talking about how her first makeup tutorials are just, she was like, I cringe so bad looking at my old makeup tutorials. Like, they're so bad, and they're like not even good. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about, and I'm telling people, this and that.
Yeah, and us nature versus nurture.
Yeah, don't go back.
Episode 2, go ahead, feel free to listen.
And so I said that, I was like, that's a good thing. That's like a sign of growth, because I cringe so bad looking back at anything that I've done, literally. Like, our first podcast episodes, I'm like, oh wow, like, you've just, no. So, and same with my YouTube videos and all of that, but that's a sign of growth, and like, everyone has to start somewhere. And at the time, the thing is, like, I was feeling myself, so it's like, okay, go off, queen. Like, you were loving it, so just go for it. And I'm sure I'll look back in 5 years at the podcast that we do now and be like, ew, like, I'm so cringe. But it's like, whatever, that's just life. And someone actually had messaged me. It was like a girl from my hometown that I kind of knew. It was on a TikTok dance that Chelsea and I were doing during quarantine, which admittedly was extremely cringe.
Very cringe.
Which was admittedly very cringe. She had a point. But she messaged me.
Listen to the haters. They always know.
They have your best interest sometimes. No, she accidentally sent it to me instead of her friend or her sister. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is so cringe. Like, why do they think they're cute?
Not the hip thrust.
And I replied, I was like, I can't wait to talk about this on my podcast. Like, because I always talk about, like, accidental texts on my podcast. I was like, I'm not going to say your name, but, like, I'm definitely talking about
The Lord always
this.
provides content,
He
as we
always
say.
provides. So I replied. The craziest part, actually, this is, like, so not important. I'm, like, just talking about all my
Go
jokes.
watch the video. It's so funny.
No, she actually replied and was like, I'm so embarrassed, and like, I'm really sorry. She's like, honestly, I just haven't been feeling very confident lately, and like, I just haven't been happy in my own life. And
We love a self-aware queen.
yeah, and I meant to send that to my sister, because like, we've just been thinking blah, blah, blah. She like sent me this whole long thing, and I was like, honestly, I respect it. Like, the fact that you're able to just own up and be like, I'm just not happy and I took it out on you. Like, sorry. I was like, no worries at all. Like, you know, we all have our bad days. But my point is that, like, anyone who is doing that at all, like, don't ever let that stop you from chasing your dreams. Like, never let just a random person on the internet, like, I've realized, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I always feel like I'm, you know, I never want to, like, offend anyone or, like, say anything. I'm always have, you know, pure intentions. Like, how could someone take what I say and be like, you're this or that? And then I just realized everyone has their own life, their own experiences, their own thought processes, and it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. Like,
And also, it's okay that they don't like you. I think that's, like,
Yes.
also kind of a hard pill to swallow. It's like, it's also okay if they don't like your podcast. It's okay if they think you're annoying. It's okay, you know, all of that. You don't have to try and convince them or force them or even be like, well, they just don't know what's good. You know, they don't know that that's, like, the best of the best. You can believe that, but also at the same time.
but we have learned haters are always ugly,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Seriously.
But I'm kind of kidding, but
Yeah. Anyways, what was I just saying?
sorry.
I'm like, all that's in my mind is haters are ugly.
That's what I have to tell myself sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay that they do that because if you think about it, like, I listen to plenty of podcasts, and then after a couple years, I'm like, I'm not really driving anymore, and that's fine. You can just have a mutual little breakup, but don't get too, like, bogged down by that. I guess it's okay. Just let it go,
Yeah.
and you know, in with the new, out with the old, as they say. That's also kind of mean, but oh well.
I was saying in a recent podcast also, like, especially if you, because there's certain people who would say stuff to be like, whatever, it doesn't matter what they say, but it's like they just don't get our humor or something, or like our vibe. And I'm thinking, and we would like take it so personally, and just be like, why don't they get it? Like, we're just joking, like, we're trying to have fun. Like, we never would want someone to actually feel bad. Like, we're just, we you know, have kind of dark humor sometimes, we're like sarcastic, but anyway, we're like trying so hard. And again, I don't know where I'm going with this, actually. I kind of completely
Like,
forgot.
oh yeah, they're wrong. That's what we came
Like,
to.
oh yeah, they're always wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just doesn't matter is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. And also, like, why would you take their critique if, like, you don't even vibe with them in real
And
life?
they don't actually know you.
Yeah,
You know.
they don't know you. They don't like your humor. It's like, why would I be, you know, take their criticism then? It's like, we're obviously not jiving, so it doesn't matter. And then that's fine. We can mutually not jive, and that's 1,000% okay. I think, like, the sooner, and again, I'm, like, coming to that realization now after years of being, like, so offended every time anyone, like, critiques me in the slightest bit. But I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, I truly internalize, like, oh, it really doesn't matter. And
You look so relaxed. I need to, like, lay back, but
Oh,
I'm wearing a skirt.
my back
so.
was starting to hurt a little, so I just had to do that.
Oh, that's not gonna work. Sorry, guys.
But anyway, anything else you wanted to mention before we get into our
Yeah.
Q&A?
Any closing remarks?
Closing remarks.
The benediction. Oh, sorry. Too many religious jokes. I'm sorry. I forgot.
Forgot
let's
that we're in
see.
Utah?
Yeah, I forgot we're in Utah.
No,
love
they will
Utah.
land here. This
Yeah.
is where they will
Yeah.
land.
Woo!
Okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
move on to a Q&A section, everybody. So if anyone has questions, and please, like, we don't want crickets, y'all. Please.
Ask us anything.
Ask us anything.
Our birth charts. We're up for anything. Oh wait, are we picking them?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, they're running
They're
them.
gonna
Okay,
give
they're
mics
running.
to some people.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I'm a day one listener and a SoCal queen like you guys. So
Woo! Okay.
Yeah.
I love the
Yay.
whole valley thing. I do live in the valley, so
We
I
love
love
that.
that.
Valley girls.
Valley Girls Unite.
I love both of your content. Specifically, I had a question for JC on TikTok because I think my favorite thing about your TikTok content is how it feels like we're just hanging out. Like, it seems so unplanned, but you have so much of it coming out. So, like, do you have a process for TikTok? Like, do you think today I'm gonna do you time block from like 2 to 5, you're gonna make TikToks, or does it just come to you and you just make it a priority, or do you just kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Does
I
that make
mean,
sense?
I have a bit of a process, but this is what I've learned after like a decade of doing Instagram. What burned me out of Instagram and why I was like, I don't really care like to do this anymore is because it was too planned for me specifically, just for my personality. I feel like when I have like heavy restrictions on myself, it just makes me not want to do it. It's like oh, you have to shoot this and this and this today. I'm just like, oh, I'm like overwhelmed now. And when I give myself a little more freedom to just be like, you can post whatever you want, it like frees my mind up more. That being said, like I was mentioning, I have a list of legitimately 200 TikTok ideas. So if I'm ever like, I don't know what to post, I go to that and I'm like, oh, that would be a funny one for today, or that would be a good one. But at the same time, TikTok moves so fast and there's so many trends and so many like sounds that whenever I find a sound that I think is funny or I like, I'll just favorite it or save it. And I try and just post a few times a day just to like stay consistent. But I like TikTok because it does feel more real, I guess, and a little unfiltered and unplanned. So there will be random things that happen. Unfortunately, me literally pooping my pants when I mention that on TikTok, like things like that, again, the content just comes and I say, okay, I'm rolling with it. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
I
it
feel
does.
like I do both.
Yeah, and then Chelsea, what about you for Instagram?
That's a good question. I'm like, have I posted on Instagram in like 7 years? I kind of love, this is literally the complete opposite. I'm like, I plan meticulously the feed, but
We love that.
I feel like for the Instagram feed per se, I mean, that's not the same for stories. I kind of like JC does with our What We Said feed. I like to use an app, like Preview app I like sometimes. Sometimes it's really annoying, but
It's been very glitchy lately.
yeah, it literally logs me out every 5 seconds. But you can kind of like, I like to get like inspo photos from Pinterest and kind of put them in like okay, this color scheme, you know, this is of her shoes. Okay, that's cute. Put it in so that I can see like where I'm going. You know, obviously it changes a little bit, but obviously this is before I had Case because I have not been doing a good job of this recently. But that's what I would do before, and I really liked it because I always had a direction which I'm going instead of just like, oh, let's go take photos today, and then we'd be out. And I hate every photo. I'm like, this looks horrible on my feed. The colors are off. I feel like having, you know, knowing what you're aiming for is good.
Thank
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was
Sorry.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay,
Hi.
first off, I'm starstruck. Like when I
Stop.
saw you guys out in the hall, I was like, "Oh my god, I've seen them in person."
Yeah, come say hi to us afterwards.
Yes,
Sorry, I was like
please.
literally running on the way here. I'm like,
Okay, so me and my sister started a podcast, and it's been super fun. But
what's the name? Plug it.
it's called the Sunny and Ween Show.
Wait, the
So,
what?
The Sunny and Ween Show.
Oh, nice.
Because her nickname is like Sunny and mine is Ween, so.
Ween, as in
Yeah.
like wiener.
Like-
Okay.
like-
we love to see it.
Yeah, it's like weenie, but it's
I
short
love it.
for ween.
Okay, really quick. I was gonna
Yeah.
say I had this in my notes. Like clickbait with podcasts. Unfortunately, it works every time. So
Good to
do
know.
with that
Something
what you
to keep
will.
in mind for the titles.
Anyways, I was gonna say Ween. Great name.
Perfect, thank you. So my question is, like, me and my sister, our dynamic is like super, like we're both very different but very similar, and so we kind of stick to like our similarities. But at the same time, like we're both so different, but we feel like if we're like too different, we won't get like the target audience that we want. So my question is, how do you like be real about who you are without being like too real? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was gonna say, even with sisters, it reminds me of the morning toast. Like something I love. I mean, maybe this is not what you mean by different. Maybe you guys like argue amicably, but I have a sister as well. And something I love listening to the morning toast is like when they argue with each other, it's like you feel like, yes, like that's sisters fighting. I love to hear it. It's like almost comforting for other sisters. Like, oh yeah, like I feel like I'm part of the sisterhood. You know what I mean? So even if you are different, you're like talking about something that you guys maybe don't agree on, or, you know.
I think being different is better. I
Yeah.
think if you're so similar, it's almost like I think Chelsea and I can say the same thing. I
Yeah.
feel like we're similar in some ways, but like very different in others, and that's what makes a good dynamic. And I think about same with frenemies. It's like, yeah, that was a little bit of a volatile situation, but at the same time, they are very different people, and that's what makes it work.
Do you guys mean your personalities are different, or like what you're interested in is different?
Like both. Like we do have similar interests, but like I don't know. I like to swear, and she doesn't.
Okay.
So I'm like, do I
See,
swear?
but we love
or
that.
Do I not?
We love that
We
dynamic.
wish we could do that, but our parents listen, so.
Yeah.
Well, see, my fiance's mom listens. I'm like, if she finds out everything I do and like everything I talk about, like, I don't know.
Oh, you
Yeah.
said your fiance?
I thought
Yeah.
she
I
said
thought
Beyonce's
she said
mom.
Beyonce.
Oh,
I said,
dude, I
honey,
wish.
Like queen.
you already
I
made
wish.
Why are
it.
you asking for our advice?
Not Beyonce's mom. Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. I think stick to your thing, stick to your personalities, and like, What did you mean by like being too real? Like being too raw?
Like cussing?
Like,
I feel, no, we literally feel that. That's what I'm saying. This is a serious thing. I feel that
This
100%.
is a safe space.
I don't know, like other things too. Like,
Be real, girls.
Like,
Just be real.
okay,
I think
like I like weed, and that's illegal. I like to talk about it, but she doesn't.
I'm dead. Okay, thank you for being honest.
whatever you're comfortable with each other. Like if the other person's
Okay.
like, let's not chat about that, it's like, okay, we don't have to chat.
And you can even say that. Like, people like to hear behind the scenes things. Like, they like to hear, you know, us being like, I'm like, oh, I think it's the episode coming out. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, can we pause? I literally have to go to the bathroom so bad. I'm going to put my pants right this instant. It's like,
I
and
love
Jason's
that
like, leave
last
that in, leave it
episode.
in. Because people like to hear that. It makes them feel more like, even if you're like, you know, I'm high right now. And she's like, oh my gosh, stop. It's like, people like to hear, that's fun.
Yeah, I
you know
think
what I mean?
just from this, you gained a few listeners.
Yeah.
You're ready for the charts.
Awesome. Well, I answered it perfectly, so
That
then
could be your first merch drop. I like weed.
Yeah. True. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we supposed to? By the way, are we
Yeah.
supposed to point to people? Okay, we'll just not.
Hello.
Hi.
Also a huge fan. We're here from Toronto, Canada, so we came a long way
Oh my
to
gosh.
say hello.
Oh my
Woo,
gosh.
represent.
We love our Canadian queens.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I also have a podcast called The Business Casual, and my question is, I feel like not a lot of people talk about like monetizing your podcast, and I'm just curious from like your perspective, how do you differentiate like brands you want to work with personally and like brands for the podcast, and like obviously you have an agency, but I guess going back to the beginning, like how did you kind of approach brands and show like these are the listeners we have, like this is the value you can bring? I guess like I just love to hear from your perspective, like how you navigated that like in the beginning.
That's a great question.
We
We should have covered that. In our
Yeah, we should have
first
covered
round.
that, and thank you for bringing that up.
It's okay.
It's a planted question.
Yeah, we first of all got very lucky because we kind of signed with our network very early on. So before we even monetized at all, like we didn't know how to monetize. That's kind of why we wanted a network. And again, it was like a different time of podcasting. But now, like, I would say if you just like the brand, if you're a fan, like absolutely you should reach out to them. Literally reach out to 1 million brands. Like just send emails all day. Send them your listenership, the demographics of them, your media kit, examples of things you've done in the past. Like as far as like working with, you know, for your personal brand or for the podcast, I feel like kind of most brands that I would work with for my personal brand are the same that I would work with for the podcast and vice versa. Like I don't care. If I like the brand, I'm ready to talk about it. And I think just reach out, like I said, like don't wait for opportunities to come to you, because podcasting, even though it's blowing up, and that's why if anyone in this room wants to start a podcast, you should do so immediately. It's still a kind of a little bit of like uncharted territory with monetization. Like I've heard a lot of people be like, I don't know, well, how do you like make money off this? And I'm like, honestly, I'm not sure. Like just start emailing. But I would just like recommend you just reach out a ton and try and get some brand deals that way for the podcast.
What, I just had a question for you. I forgot.
Does that help at all?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Oh, I was going to say, what is your podcast about?
Oh,
The most basic question. Sorry,
yeah,
I'm
no,
dumb.
I love that. It's an interview-based podcast. I also do it with my younger sister, but my younger sister is in high school still and really shy, so she does like our graphics and coding the
Cute.
website. And then I interview different women in business from like entrepreneurship, corporate, like whatever, just to share their struggles, like female empowerment, and really just help people find careers they love that they might not have heard about in school
Yeah.
and that are not like exactly traditional. So
I love that. I feel like you can stick to like what you talk about as well, where it's like Squarespace would be a great one, or like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, stamps.com, where it's like for small businesses. Obviously it's great, but also again,
You could
if
do anything.
Yeah, if you love like Glossier, it's like, and you want to reach out and they can be a sponsor. It has nothing to do with necessarily business, but
Yeah.
you love it, you can talk about it, and again, people will know if like you hate the product and you're just like robot, you know,
Right.
ad read. But again, if it's, you'll kind of learn as you go as well. It's like
I
sometimes
have-
we'll take one and then later we're like, it wasn't like the best, but we still are glad that we, you know, did it.
I have one other thing I was gonna say. Like, also, if you like, you should share. Even if you have an interview-based podcast, I feel like it's really good. And you might already do this, so If you do, that's great. Like share a lot about yourself and your interests at the beginning so people really have a relationship with you before you like dive into an interview. And
Yeah,
that way
that's
when you
great.
do ad spots, it feels like a lot more organic because it's like, oh yeah, she's talked about that before. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, she is super into health, so that makes sense, you know, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
That's awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Also, a lot of CBD companies out there for you, looking for
Weed.
podcast ads. Miss Weed Queen.
Miss Weenie.
Miss Weed.
Okay, anyone over there?
Hi, my name is Abby. And
Oh,
my,
hi.
Hello. And my question is what goals are you guys working towards for What We Said and personally? Like, what should we be manifesting for you?
Oh.
Oh, we love
that.
the manifestation power.
Well, we would love to go. Like, we were planning a live tour, and then Miss 2020 hit. So.
and then Miss Corona came to town.
Yeah, so we couldn't do that. That would be amazing, like if we could, you know, kind of tour and get that all figured out and go and meet like amazing listeners all around the country. That would be great.
We
What
have
else?
a lot of fun merch like
Yeah.
drops that I feel like are kind of unique. Hopefully they come to fruition, please.
Please
God.
let the ports let things in. I don't know what's going on in the ports, but
the delays. So I feel like we're working towards that. Also, yeah, the what's it called?
the tour.
The tour, and then we're also doing a little collaboration. I don't know if I'm allowed to say any
Ooh,
words about.
inside tip.
But yeah, we're doing a collaboration with a brand for like our own little collection of something that's going to be really, really freaking cute. You guys are going to be obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Sorry, did that? I'm like, did that answer every time? I think that's it.
Thank you guys for asking questions. We were like, if no one asks questions, we will feel like the biggest dummies in the world.
Hello? Okay, cool. Okay, oh my gosh, first of all, thank you to everyone around me. I wanted this question so bad, so everyone raised their hands with me. So thank you guys.
Gorgeous.
So my name is Sam. I own a social media marketing agency called Sauce Media Group. We're
Amazing.
taking up this like entire row. So we're obsessed with you guys. I have been following you guys since day one. And I also love Dear Media, and I would love to hear how you guys like pitched yourself, what that process is like, how like editing episodes looks like what is like your guys' relationship with Dear Media?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Very self-reflective question. We're
When-
like, what is our relationship with your media?
When we first reached out to them, I feel like we just went into the meeting. We were meeting with the CEO, and we were like, what the F are we doing? Like, what? We've had this podcast for a few months, so we're like, we're not sure what's happening. But I feel like we just tried to, like, really remain ourselves and be like, hey, we have this podcast. Like, we've been best friends since high school. You know, here are the episodes of it. I don't even think we knew analytics, so it's like they were truly being just, like, based off our personalities. And I think they dug into our analytics later, but we were just like, we really would love to work with you guys, and like we feel like we could be a good like also asset to your network and like bring a lot of new people. So I think it's important to like tell other people what you can offer them. Like if you're trying to get any sort of deal, period, like if you're an influencer trying, like you said, a podcaster trying to work with a brand for your podcast, like yeah, tell them about your audience, but like get very niche and be like, here is what I've done in the past. Like our audience is extremely loyal. They like this and this. I don't know, get very specific. And I feel like that was something that I remember mentioning is like we already have a very loyal audience that we feel like we can bring to even just like Dear Media. And as far as like editing and stuff, we were doing it ourselves for a while, and it was hell. It was hell because
Not us editing out every single like.
we
Not
edited
us
out
editing
every
out.
single like and So it took
The
10
crowd
hours.
was too stunned to speak.
It was
Truly, that's a lot of
atrocious.
work.
So that was a lot of work, and that was also very unnecessary, and I would never recommend you do that. Just say as many likes as you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But now they do all of the production for us. So they do all of the editing. They upload the podcast. So essentially, we just record the podcast and the ads. We send them the files. They put everything together, and they upload it. And we tell them if we want anything taken out, which 99% of the time we just say, leave it all in. We don't care. And we used to be a little bit more picky.
Yeah.
Is there anything
Yeah.
else that, well, I mean, they do so much for us.
Yeah.
They are the ones who pitch us to all the brands. Like, we don't reach out to, I mean, we'll tell them if we like certain brands, but they pitch us to everyone. They have all of our analytics. Like, they really do a lot for us. They also do all of our merch stuff. Like, we come up with the designs and we are specific with them, but they have all the samples made and do, like, everything.
Yeah, they help us a lot. Also, I was gonna say even when we first went in, I feel like you hear like the fake it till you make it, which is, you know, funny and true sometimes. But at the same time, I feel like if you're just real and authentic, it's like even us, like constantly, we're always like making jokes. Like I'm sure we said something in there where it's like, you don't want to pretend like I know everything and I'm a professional, because they're going to get that from you. They're going to be like, okay, she's kind of giving off like, you know, not so genuine vibes. You're just like, hey, oh my gosh, like yourself excited. That's totally fine as well. And again, I think people, especially people who are in that business where it's like, you know, you're picking out talent. It doesn't matter if they have millions of followers. It's like, obviously they're gonna see them faster. But if you're like, hey, I've never done social media, but like I'm hilarious, or I have, you know, really good takes on these things, people can see that, and you just gotta share. So you don't have to pretend like, yes, I am already, you know, successful and have a lot of followers. So just be yourself.
Definitely, I love that. Very true.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I have one question. This is nitty gritty, and I don't know if you're allowed to say
I love that
this.
she's just sitting with the microphone like,
We're just hanging out over here. But do you like with working with them, as far as like, do they just take a percentage of your guys' deals? Are you guys salaried in? Like, what does that pay structure look like?
They take a
we
percentage.
make $5 billion a year.
Beautiful.
That's what you're wondering. No.
Can I join you?
Yes, they take a percentage of everything, and it's bigger than a percentage that, like, when I was signed with management personally, like, it's bigger than that percentage, because I think of all of the stuff they do. Like, with my old management for my personal brand, it's like they would pitch me and be like, oh, here's the deal we got you. But with Dear Media, they produce, they edit, they do our merch, like they do everything. So
Yeah.
We do give them more than like the typical agency.
But I also think that gives them and us more
Incentive.
Yeah, incentive to, you know, grow, to get, they're like very invested in our growth, because it's obviously if we're making more money, they're also making more money. So they're like, okay, let's do everything that we can do. Let's evaluate. Let's really pay attention. They're very invested in our show. Like our producer is very invested in our show and in our growth, and always like giving us feedback. So it's really nice.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left.
I was gonna say this might be the last
Okay,
one.
really quick, I have a question about, I think sometimes it's overwhelming with the amount of ideas or things that you want to do, right? Like, some people really struggle to have creativity, but I feel like that's the opposite problem I have. It's like sitting down and being able to complete the task. Like, I have
so
so many
ADHD,
things I
gotcha.
want to do, and I can't get it all done. And so how do you guys pick what you're going to invest your time in? Is that time frame months? Is that year? Does that make sense? Like, how do you
Yeah.
prioritize what is going to be the forefront?
I feel like an 80-20 rule is pretty good. Like that's what I heard from somewhere again. Sorry, I literally never give credit because I have a horrible memory. But actually, that's not true. I have an amazing memory, but I just take the credit to myself. I'm like, I came up with this phrase. No, it's like 80-20. So you put 80% into whatever is like, if you are, you know, paying your rent, you have to put 80% of your time into what's making you the most money. And then you can, you know, put 20% into your side hustle or into something that you really are passionate about. Especially like, for example, if you do already have a day job and it's like, okay, I'm not like super stoked about this, but I really love painting or I really love sculpting or something like that. Then you could put 20% of your time in that. And if you're really focusing and dedicating that 20% and giving it all, like your attention and focus with that 20% of your time, and it starts to grow, you can kind of change from that point on where it's like, okay, now it's making more of my money. Now I can put 80% of my time and my priority into that. And then, 20% to still making more money if you need that, you know, as a part-time job or something like that. I feel like that's more like realistic, because obviously everyone would love to just drop everything and just do that one thing that they want to do, but not everyone has the resources or, you know, the capability to do that.
I also feel like maybe this is bad advice. This advice I would give to like one of my friends is like, don't focus on what's even making the most money necessarily. Focus on what you like the most. Like, I again, could be taken the wrong way, but for me, it's like Instagram by far was like the biggest way I could make money. I literally deleted the whole app because I'm just like, I don't like it anymore. Like, I don't, at this moment, and who's to say, you know, like maybe in a month I'll be like, I'm feeling inspired again, but it's like, I don't care. At a certain point, it's not worth money if you are just like so miserable. And so I understand sometimes like exactly what Chelsea was saying. Like sometimes it's important to, like, it's like, this is what's paying my rent. I have no choice, but be actively working on something that's like you're super passionate about, and that's kind of where I'm at. Even with TikTok, I think it's evident that I just have so much more fun on TikTok, and so I've literally made it my mission. I'm like, this will be now like my main platform, and it is. It's like my biggest platform now, simply because of like the time and energy I've invested into it. And yeah, I just think like focus in on what you want to do, like what lights you up, what are you inspired by, and what is so fun. It might even be like an aspect of your job. Like even when I did photography, I still am so passionate about creating and about photography, but I realized I'm like, I've kind of burnt out of the type of photography I'm doing. So now I'm gonna switch it into this thing and make money in this way. And really quickly to end, like day to day, I'm a list person. That's how I can't get anything done if I don't have like a very specific to-do list. And it sounds like if you're saying you're creative, but it's hard for you to, I don't know, maybe you already do that, but like I have a very specific, in order of importance to-do list, and it's like I do not stray, or else I'm just gonna be, who knows what, doing the TikTok dances. Like and maybe that's on my list some days, but some days it's not. And it's like I just stick very specifically to the list to get stuff done. So,
Thank you guys.
Yes.
of course.
Thank
Okay,
you
that's all we
guys.
had time for, you guys. I hope we get to say hi to you after. We love you guys so much, and that's what we said.